ජලයේ නැවුම් රසයෙන් උණු කර නිවාගත් ජලයට වඩා සුරක්ෂිත වතුර දෙන Unilever Pureit.
Constitutional solution. Proposed 21st Amendment to be taken up for discussion and then for cabinet approval. Non-partisan government. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe invites independent political parties for talks. SLFP meeting with Prime Minister due tomorrow. Resilience essential. All people's representatives must work together immediately for a solution on behalf of every citizen. President says in his message for Vesak. Appeal for information. Police seek public assistance to identify those involved in attacks on Goldface Green protesters. All this and much more coming up on this Sunday, the 15th of May 2022.
සුවඳ ජැස්මින් සහ විටමින් E සාරය සමගින් Navalax White.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
And a warm welcome. You're joining us on First at 9, the AdaDerana English news service. Although Sri Lanka now has a new Prime Minister and 4 cabinet ministers appointed, Minister Dinesh Gunawardena and Prasanna Ranatunga due to be appointed as the leaders of the House and Chief Government Whip, the position of Deputy Speaker still remains vacant. In this context, the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna noting that the earlier election for the Deputy Speaker was the subject of much ridicule, called on leaders of all political parties represented in Parliament to come into consensus to unanimously appoint a suitable person for the position. However, the SLPP has nominated Ajit Rajapaksa, while Samagi Jana Balawegaya nominated Rohini Wijeratne to the post of Deputy Speaker in Parliament.
Following the appointment of United National Party leader Ranil Wickremesinghe as Prime Minister on Thursday, many political parties announced that they will not take any positions in the new government under Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe. The Sri Lanka Freedom Party, the 10 independent political parties and the main opposition of the Samagi Jana Balawegaya said that they will not accept any positions in the new government. However, they stated that they will not hinder any positive steps taken by the Premier for the development of the country. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Wickremesinghe invited the 10 independent political parties to join him in discussions on the current political situation of the country. In response, the leaders of the independent parties announced that they expect the Premier to provide them with a suitable time for the discussion. Meanwhile, the Jatika Jana Balawegaya and the Tamil National Alliance expressed a similar stance that they will not be part of the new government formed under the new Premier. However, the majority party in Parliament, the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, stated that while they remain independent, they will support Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe with the government's activities. Meanwhile, leader of the Tamil Makkal Thesiya Kuttani, parliamentarian C.V. Vigneswaran, said today that he is willing to take up a ministerial portfolio under the new Premier if 3 of his conditions are met.
Until now, there has been no communication between me and Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe. Now I asked him and told him that I would like to join him. There is no such thing. This was a purely an answer to a question where I said, I may consider this if he approves of 3 conditions which I would like to put forward. First condition was to release all the Tamil political prisoners. There are about 120 people. Out of them, some of them are... Then the others, there are cases pending against them. All those people, the cases must be withdrawn. There are others who are in detention and nothing has been done. All those people must be released. The North and East land grabbing is taking place under the direction of the Archaeological Commission, which is working today. All the lands that have been taken over must be released back to the owners. Then the third one, from 2009, the army has continued to be occupying in the northern province. At the moment, nearly 100,000 army soldiers, sailors, air forcemen are there in the northern province. And all those must be at least reduced by at least half for the moment. And then as time goes on, it must be progressively decreased. And they must be and we must be free out of an occupational army in our areas.
The Sri Lanka Freedom Party in the meantime was expected to hold a meeting today to discuss the country's economic and political situation. However, the meeting that was scheduled to take place today in the evening had been called off. Despite the SLFP's collective stance on the current government, SLFP Badulla District MP Chamara Dasanayaka said that he had decided to support the new government. Meanwhile, Minister Dinesh Gunawardena is expected to be appointed as the new leader of the House, while Minister Prasanna Ranatunga will be appointed as the new Chief Government Whip. Even though this may be the case, the position of the Deputy Speaker of the Parliament still remains vacant. This is after MP Ranjit Siyamalapitiya, who was re-elected to the position after a parliamentary vote on the 5th of May, resigned within 24 hours of his appointment. With this being the case, a group of 10 MPs representing the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna in a letter to the party leaders stated that the election of the Deputy Speaker on the 5th of this month had caused a great deal of ridicule in the country. Therefore, with the consent of all party leaders in the parliament, they requested that a suitable person be unanimously appointed to the position. However, 2 proposals have so far been made for the position of Deputy Speaker. One of them were made by the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, nominating MP Ajit Rajapaksa, while Samagi Jana Balawegaya proposed the name of Rohini Wijeyaratne.
Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe says the draft 21st Amendment to the Constitution will be taken up for discussion tomorrow and then be presented to Cabinet for approval. In a statement following discussions with the World Bank and the Asian Development Bank, the Prime Minister also said that the 2 funding agencies have agreed to provide aid to Sri Lanka in order to procure medicine, food and fertilizer. According to the Premier, the government is now seeking alternative methods to secure funding required for fuel purchases as banks in the country are faced with shortages of US dollars.
Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe today engaged in separate discussions with the country manager of the World Bank in Sri Lanka, Chio Kanda, and country director of the Asian Development Bank in Sri Lanka, Chen Chen, regarding the economic crisis in the country. The discussions focused on assistance for the supply of medicine, food and fertilizer to Sri Lanka.
ලෝක බැංකුව ආස්ට්‍රේලියානු සංවර්ධන බැංකුව සමග පැවැත් වූ සාකච්ඡාවලදී තව දුරටත් සෞඛ්‍යාංශයටත් ආහාරාංශයටත් පොහොරාංශයටත් ආධාර දෙන බවට පොරොන්දු වුණා. දැන් ආර්ථික අංශයටත් ඒ වගේම ආධාර දෙන්න යනවා. ඒ ආධාර ප්‍රමාණය වැඩි වෙයි. මීට ඉස්සෙල්ලා සාකච්ඡා කරපු රටවල් සියල්ලම දැන් පියවර ගෙන යනවා ලංකාවට ආධාර කරන්නට. අපිට දැන් තියෙන ප්‍රශ්නේ තමයි මේ රටේ බලශක්ති ශේෂ්ත්‍රයට එන සතියට ඉන්ධන ලබා ගන්නට. බැංකුවල ඩොලර් හිඟයක් තිබෙන නිසා අපි අනික් මාර්ගවලින් දල් ලබා ගන්නට ක්‍රියා කරගෙන යනවා. ඒ වගේම හෙට 21 වෙනි සංශෝධනයේ පිළිබඳ සාකච්ඡා ආරම්භ කළා. ඊට පසුව ඒ කෙටුම්පත සකස් කරන්නට පියවර ගන්නවා. එය කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලයට කරන්න. අද රටේ තියෙන ආර්ථික තත්ත්වය ගැන සමාලෝචන සියල්ලම අවසන් කරලා තියෙන්නේ. හෙට ඒ පිළිබඳව මම වාර්තා කරන්නට බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා.
Deputy Leader of the United National Party Ruwan Wijewardena, who was appointed to look into the shortage of pharmaceutical drugs under the Prime Minister's Special Committee on Shortages of Essential Items, today assured that he will discuss with the Prime Minister on sourcing funds to import essential pharmaceutical drugs and surgical devices to the country. During a meeting between Ruwan Wijewardena and health officials, it was revealed that foreign pharmaceutical manufacturers are planning to blacklist the State Pharmaceuticals Corporation over its failure to honour payments after opening letters of credit.
Deputy Leader of the United National Party, Ruwan Wijewardena, who was appointed by Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe to look into the shortage of medicines, held a meeting with officials of the Ministry of Health yesterday at the Prime Minister's office. During the meeting, it was revealed that payments have not been made to suppliers of essential medicines, food items and medical devices for a period of 4 months, with a total of 34 billion rupees outstanding in payments. Secretary to the Health Ministry, Major General Dr. Sanjeev Munasinghe, said that no medicines or surgical equipment have been ordered for import since April. With that being the case, essential pharmaceutical drugs and devices are sourced informally via friends and contacts abroad as a measure to fulfill current requirements at hospitals. During the meeting, it was also raised that foreign pharmaceutical manufacturers are in the process of blacklisting the State Pharmaceutical Corporation or its failure to make payments even after opening letters of credit. The health secretary has said that he intends to use funds obtained from the World Bank and the Asian Development Bank to import medicine. It was also revealed that goats and cotton may be lost in the future due to shortages of raw material required for production. During the talks, Ruwan Wijewardena promised to hold discussions with Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe with regard to securing funds for purchases of pharmaceutical drugs and surgical equipment.
In response to the article of the Hindu newspaper, Sri Lanka Defence Ministry said in a statement that the said information and all information received by the intelligence and security forces in connection with national security will be duly investigated and all steps be taken to strengthen the security while informing the respective security forces on the same. Quoting Indian intelligence services, the Hindu newspaper reported last Friday that former cadre of the banned LTTE group are regrouping to launch attacks in Sri Lanka to mark the Mullaivaikkal anniversary that falls on the 18th of May. The news article also said that the Indian intelligence had said that some of the former cadre had entered Tamil Nadu to plan and execute their sinister plans in Sri Lanka.
On Friday the 13th of May, India's Hindu newspaper published an article quoting Indian intelligence agencies that former cadre of the banned LTT are regrouping to launch attacks in Sri Lanka. The article also says that as the island nation has declared emergency twice amid escalating violent protests, some sections of the Sri Lankan Tamil diaspora with multinational links were trying to make their presence felt in the ongoing clashes between protesters and security forces. The Hindu report says, besides planning attacks to mark the Mullaivaikkal anniversary that falls on the 18th of May, which some groups observes as Tamil Genocide Remembrance Day, ex-LTT cadre were also conspiring to avenge the killings of their leader, Verupillai Prabhakaran, newsreader Isai Priya, and others who were killed as the ethnic conflict ended after fierce fighting in 2009. The news article also says that Indian intelligence sources said some erstwhile cadre had entered Tamil Nadu to plan and execute their sinister plans in Sri Lanka. Special teams of the state intelligence and local police drawn from coastal districts had mounted vigil along the 1,000+ kilometer coastline in the state, adding that the coastline security group of the Tamil Nadu police had enhanced the frequency of patrolling along the territorial waters. The sources have also said that fishermen venturing into the sea have sensitized to the risk factors and advised to look for any suspicious activity of persons in deep sea and along the international maritime boundary line. Finally, sources say that superintendents of police of all coastal districts were told to strengthen checkposts for intensified vehicle checks on the roads leading to the sea, while all coastal security agencies were told to prevent any intrusion to Sri Lankan nationals into India. In response to the article published by The Hindu, the Sri Lankan Defence Ministry in statement said that it inquired from the Indian intelligence services. The statement also said that the intelligence services have informed Sri Lanka that the information has been given as general information and had further informed that the investigations will be carried out in this regard and action will be taken to inform Sri Lanka about it. Further, the Defence Ministry says that the said information and all information received by the intelligence and security forces in connection with the national security will be duly investigated and all steps are taken to strengthen the security while informing the respective security forces on the same.
Sri Lanka today began unloading a new shipment of 40,000 metric tons of diesel from India supplied under the credit line for fuel. However, 37,000 metric tons of petrol shipment anchored at the Colombo port is yet to be unloaded as the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation is still finding the required dollars for payment settlement.
Fuel, now a scarce resource in Sri Lanka due to the country's inability to secure funds to import more shipments in the face of a lack of dollar reserves, continue to aggravate the crisis. The situation, which now has worsened, has resulted in the closure of fuel stations as well as the expansion of the fuel queues across the country. According to sources of the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation, a 37,000 metric ton petrol shipment has arrived in the country, but the corporation is unable to clear the shipment due to the lack of dollars for the payment. The sources also confirmed that the said shipment consists of fuel necessary for at least 10 days. As for diesel, a 40,000 metric ton shipment arrived in the Sri Lankan waters during the early hours of today. Unloading of the shipment began following its sample testing. Further, another 40,000 metric ton diesel shipment is expected to arrive on Thursday. Meanwhile, Litrogas Lanka Limited is still unable to settle funds and clear a 3,500 metric ton LP gas shipment, which can provide somewhat relief to the public struggling at queues to secure domestic cooking gas. During the day, 37.5 kilogram gas cylinders were distributed from the Litro terminal to meet the commercial and industrial needs of the country.
More news coming your way after this short break.
Big 3.
Also in the country's political developments, Chairman of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, Maithripala Sirisena, announced today that they're willing to support the new government under Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe. In a letter that was written to the Premier, he stated that his party is willing to extend their support to the Premier, Ranil Wickremesinghe. He also stated that the SLFP is due to meet Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe tomorrow for talks. The Public Utilities Commission announced today that there will be no power interruptions in the country tomorrow. The utilities regulator said that just as measures were taken to ensure that no power interruptions were scheduled for today in lieu of the Vesak full moon Poya day, the public will not experience power outages tomorrow. However, the PUCSL said a new schedule for power interruptions for Tuesday will be announced tomorrow. The anti-government protest at the Golface Green worked off today for its 37th day. With Vesak full moon Poya day falling today, the Gota Go Home protest site was decorated with Vesak lanterns and other decorations. Several programs also worked off during the day at the protest site in view of Vesak full moon Poya day. In objection to the government, a protest march began from the Presidential Secretariat today. Also during the day, officers of the CID arrived at the protest site as a part of their ongoing investigations with regard to the brutal attacks on the protest site by the SLPP supporters last week, that is on the 9th of May. Meanwhile, UNP Deputy Leader Ruwan Wijewardena has sent a letter to the IGP today with regard to the non-arrest of the main suspects involved in the attacks of the unarmed protesters. He said that arresting those who were involved in the post-attack violence and not the main suspects cannot be justified. Police media spokesperson Nihal Thalduwa said today that 230 suspects have been apprehended in connection with 707 cases of violence and damages to private and public property. SSP Thalduwa stated that out of the suspects arrested, 68 have been remanded, while the others were produced before courts today.
The police had managed to apprehend some suspects with regard to the arson carried out on the houses of MPs. As such, the police had stated that they arrested 6 suspects with regard to the damage caused to the house of former Health Minister Keheliya Ramukwella in Kandy and produced before the magistrates' courts in Kandy today. The magistrate had subsequently ordered for the suspects to be remanded until the 17th of this month. In the meantime, 13 suspects were arrested by the police yesterday for vandalizing the houses of S.M. Chandrasena, Shehan Semasinghe and Professor Chandajaya Sumana and were produced before the Anuradhapura Magistrate Court today. Following this, the Magistrate Court ordered the suspects to be remanded until the 24th of this month. In the meantime, police media spokesperson SSP Nihal Thalduwa said today that 4 suspects had been arrested with regard to the murder of Polonnaru MP Amarakirthi Athakorala. He said that 2 of the suspects had been handed over to the CID, while the remaining 2 had been produced before the Athanagalla Magistrates Court. Meanwhile, the police stated that 230 suspects had been arrested with regard to 707 cases where damages to private and public properties were reported. As such, the police requested the general public to call on 1997 or 118 to provide any information on persons who were involved in the attacks that took place on the 9th of May.
Now, Buddhist devotees in Sri Lanka celebrated the Vesak Poya Day, which commemorates the birth, enlightenment and passing away of Lord Buddha. In his Vesak Poya Day message today, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa called on the public representatives to work together to immediately bring about a solution on behalf of all citizens when the country is in dire straits. Further, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe said that Sri Lankans should gather and take decisions in unity to come out of this crisis situation.
Vesak Full Moon Poya Day, which is regarded as the most important Poya Day due to its commemoration of the birth, enlightenment and passing away of Lord Buddha, was celebrated among Buddhist devotees across Sri Lanka as well as over the world today. Vesak celebrations were halted during the past 2 years due to the travel restrictions and curfew imposed to curb the spread of COVID-19. Today, Vesak celebrations were held amidst a severe economic crisis the country is faced with. Further, Derana Abhivandana, the Vesak program organized by TV Derana, was also held at the Kalaniya Rajamahaviharya from 5 am until 4 this morning. Meanwhile, in his message for Vesak Poya Day, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa said that when the country is in dire straits, all the people's representatives must work together immediately for a solution on behalf of other citizens. He also said that the true goal should be to reach the desired target without deviating from the primary goal. The head of state also went on to say that we must be mindful of the current situation and unite around a program that can deliver a fair determination to all, which is the Buddhist policy. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe in his Vesak Day message pointed out that the Dhamma teachings of Gautama Buddha should be followed in practice to alleviate this uncertainty in Sri Lanka.
And that wraps up tonight's edition of First at 9. Thank you for watching. Good night.